Well, malaria is still the leading cause of death in sub-Saharan Africa, and the World Health Organization says efforts to eradicate the disease have stalled. To tackle this, more than 3,000 scientists from across Africa are meeting in Senegal for a malaria conference. It aims to discuss developments in malaria research and to find ways to eradicate and prevent the disease. Jagoe is the Executive Vice President of Medicines for Malaria Venture. He joins us live now from Senegal's capital, Dakar. Thank you for your time. Firstly, can you just paint us a picture of just how bad the malaria spread is at the moment and why we're not really any closer to eradicating it?
It's a very good question, and it has many people probing into that the nature of the disease. Malaria is found in many countries around the world, but there's no doubt that Africa is the continent that suffers the heaviest burden. In this continent, 80 to 85% of the burden of deaths of this disease are found mainly in children. So it's a devastating disease for the most vulnerable young populations on the continent. So it is a major concern. It remains a major public health issue. It shortens lives, and it's a major economic burden on countries as well because they lose some of their most promising young people to this disease. So yes, malaria is a problem. I would say that the progress actually has been remarkable over the last 15 years. And that's a function of there has been in the last 15 years a lot more concerted effort around improving the tools that we use to protect children and pregnant women and other vulnerable groups from getting malaria in the first place. And then if, heaven forbid, they do get infected, the treatment regimens today have improved remarkably compared to the year 2000, the late 1990s, when medicines weren't working pretty much at all. So it's not as bad as it was 20 years ago, and the deaths have been coming down. But I think you might be alluding to is in the last year or two, there's been a sense of plateau, that the nice decline that we saw over the last 10 years has not continued at the same pace for the last year or two. And that is something that concerns those of us who work in the malaria community.
Yes, and there's been a lot of excitement recently about a potential vaccine against malaria. Just how close are we to coming up with something like this against the disease?
So a vaccine certainly would be a remarkable addition to the tools that are used to prevent and or to treat malaria. Malaria is a terribly difficult disease to find a perfect vaccine for. The one that you're referring to most probably is something called the RTSS vaccine developed by GSK and partners. It's currently, with post-approval requests, being trialed in several countries in Africa. Its effectiveness wasn't what we normally see in some of the childhood vaccines of 80 or 90% protection. It was closer to 50% protection, and for older kids, I believe it was closer to 37 or 40%. So it is a vaccine that works. It does not appear to be working at the levels that they would have aspired to see for a classic childhood vaccine. It may have an important role to play in combining with other interventions. So vaccine plus certain treatments, vaccine plus other ways to protect people could be one additional part of that armamentarium, that toolkit that's used to prevent or treat malaria.
Yes.
My organization works actually closer to the medicine space, and that is both better medicines for treating malaria. But there's actually been, in this part of Africa where I'm sitting right now, in the western part of Africa, the Sahel region, there's been a lot of interest in the last 4 years around using drugs to prevent malaria in young children. And I have to say that what about 11, 13 countries have done in this region to prevent malaria using monthly courses of very affordable treatment has been quite remarkable. I think the malaria program managers in West Africa are very pleased with the protection you can get one season after another using this combination of two older drugs, which don't necessarily treat malaria if you get it,
Yes.
but they prevent children from getting it if they take the pills once a month. during the rainy transmission season.
Excellent, and that's very good to hear. Okay, George Jagoe, thank you again for joining us from Dhaka.